How's it going, everybody? I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with this format, how this is going to go, but I'm going to give this a shot. We'll see how it is. I'm Brian White, about 30 years in the industry, application hosting, web hosting, cloud hosting, operational support. Just going through a little bit of just kind of my thoughts and ramblings on the current state of uh, the cloud and what it is and what it isn't. And thought this we'll give this a shot and this see what I think of this kind of format. Basically, just uh, record a Zoom and see how it goes. Um, this is one of those things where it's like you either have an idea or a plan, and this is definitely an idea, not so much of a plan. Um, so let's get it started. Um, in this initial setting, I'm just going to kind of talk about kind of some of the promise and and the original goals of cloud computing, and then kind of where things have kind of ended up, and kind of riff on it from there, and we'll just see how this goes. So the initial question is, if you're not in the cloud, what do you want the cloud? Are you what's your push for the cloud? Typically, there's some kind of executive push, a fiscal discussion, a scalability concern, but a lot of in just a general move towards cloud computing. And there's a lot of value prop in what the cloud offers: scalability, agility, orchestration. Those are all table stakes in the what's now known as the public cloud, or even the hybrid public-private cloud. Is that you have this composability, you have this what feels like infinite scale, you have a buy the drink model where if you need it, you use it, if you don't, you throw it away. It's very different than the kind of more monolithic environment that you had in data centers and colo previously. So, but the question is, do you really want to be in one of the hyperscale cloud providers, or do you just want that scalability and that orchestration, the build back, and the things that you get from being in there? And a lot of times the answer is really, we want a cloud-like experience, but uh, not in this, the thought being, or at least previously, that the only way to get that was to be in the hyperscale cloud. And we all know the promise, right? The promise of the cloud is it's cheap. It has good ROI against on-prem. You don't have to care about data centers. Like, nobody wants to manage data centers. Nobody wants to manage the equipment, buying, the life cycle, the power, the cooling. It's no fun, and nobody wants to do it. So the promise was, well, you would just spin it up here. It's cheap. It's easy. You get this kind of a list of, oh, these instances and this storage, it's all general purpose, what they usually quote you, and it looks awesome. You get a ton of migration credits, refactoring credits, and stuff like that, and you're like, wow, this looks like we could do this. This looks like the dollars make sense. And then as soon as you just have to refactor a few things to kind of work in the cloud, and then you can get to that magical point of being out of the data center business, right? That's the whole goal of the cloud, right? The reality is the cloud is actually really a good fit and really consumable and comparatively inexpensive for some workloads, not for every workload. So the trick being knowing which ones, and then how to work around that, and how to either streamline those loads to work best in the cloud, or just sidestep the cloud for those workloads altogether. Either keep them in your own data center, your own colo, or some kind of cloud adjacent on-ramp situation. The bigger, more monolithic and purpose-built a application is, the more it's going to cost in the cloud. And the cloud, they really like to give you bits of things. They like to give you part of a server, part of a network, part of a storage. As soon as you start getting the whole of anything, then they're going to charge you a lot more than their cost, because they really want to sell you a piece. The old adage of you can fit more sand in a bucket than rocks. Like, if you've got big infrastructure in the cloud, you're paying for the air, you're paying for the space between, you're paying for that scale that they don't have, because you're using a whole big bento box of something. So And then you have the other stuff that you're not expecting, egress fees, transit fees, whatever they want to call them these days, monitoring, log storage fees, the credits that you got initially get you in, they expire sometimes, and well, they will expire, and then your price model goes up. Things like they no longer offer the version of a SaaS solution that you're on, so you have to move to a different version. It may have a different pricing model. A lot of things that you don't really know or expect, right? Um, these days, it's almost unusual to see somebody that runs 100% public cloud. It's everything now is hybrid, or most things now are hybrid, where you have some stuff that runs in a SaaS model. Um, you have some stuff that runs in some kind of data center colo or some kind of a corporate rack in your office or something, and then a bunch of stuff that runs in a hyperscaler or multiple hyperscalers at this point, right? You may have some apps that are an Azure service, and then may have some apps that are just using roll your own EC2 instances in that in Amazon, and then you may have something that's a GCP thing that they do really well, like an AIML or a large scale analytics, something like that. So you probably right now have all that stuff wired up all together. But if you don't, there's a lot of things like access control and networking and routing and WAN and all these things, ingress and egress, that are very complicated. But it's kind of the world we're living in today. Is that you're going to have SaaS offerings. You're going to have like a CRM system or a workflow management system that's in a SaaS system completely, that's not in either your cloud data center or your on-premise data center. And you're going to have a bunch of stuff that's in one cloud or another. It's just kind of the way it works, right? But if you're going to go full in on the public cloud or close to it, one of the first things you got to do is talk to your finance people and make sure that they're completely committed to um, uh, completely OpEx model that's completely by the drink consumption. It's difficult to forecast. Your rates can vary kind of wildly depending on factors that sometimes are outside of your control. And these are things that I've seen that have killed cloud projects in the past. Is if you're on a capital depreciation model and you're expecting to have something similar in the cloud, it just doesn't work that way. It's a purely cash flow and OpEx type of a model. So make sure that your finance folks are understanding what this means, particularly from the forecasting side, because those original run rates that you get when you're talking to a provider are not going to be what you're going to get month over month. And your business processes and your accounting process have to be able to account for the fact that you may have months that are twice as high as other months or lower possibly, and that you understand how to forecast that. It becomes a much more dynamic, and you have to move to this more of what they call a FinOps model, where your purchasing and your accounting is much more tied in with your operation stack at that point, because minor changes to application and code and things can make big impact to what your run rates look like, and that impacts the bean counter folks. Another thing is like, is your workload really set, and really, like, if you brick and mortar kind of been running 30 years and your workload is pretty much the same the whole time. Um, does the cloud make a lot of sense? Depends on your scale, right? If you're comparatively small, you probably don't, the expense of data center or colo is too high. And if you're just running, a few servers or maybe up to 100 or a couple hundred servers, you're probably going to be cheaper running it in some kind of cloud type of a deal. And but if you're at a very large scale, tens of thousands or thousands of compute instances, or pods of containers, um, and it's a very static workload, you still might have more bang for the buck by keeping a lot of those heavy workloads, in a colo or in your on-premise data center. But if you're super duper bursty and you are like an e-commerce site that runs 80% of your business in November, and then you scale down, there's no reason to build your uh, data center to run at your peak load and not be able to burst that into the cloud. That's one thing where the cloud is really a good fit, is if you truly have these really bursty transactional workloads. Not a lot of people do, but the ones that do can really take advantage of using the cloud for that burst capacity, spin it up with some kind of orchestration like a Terraform or something like that, and then be able to programmatically tear it down when you're all done. And then the other question is a big one. This is what really kills these cloud migration projects is, do you have development resources that are available to be committed to the optimization of your applications? Um, that can the product team lose enough development resources that you have people on the bench that can refactor stuff for cost containment? Because this is probably the biggest place where people fail. They lift and shift it over with the expectation that we're going to get it in the cloud, then we're going to refactor it once we're there. But they can't get the resource. There's always some kind of a business process, always something that needs those dev resources, and that run rate just gets out of control. You have to move it back into a colo situation. So you have to have commitment, like serious commitment from your application teams. There's going to be somebody that not only for the migration is going to be available to refactor applications to make them more cloud native, that's going to be able to forward, right? Like if there's a significant cost savings that can be done by moving something to a roll your own message queuing backbus or something of that nature, that those resources are there because it's going to happen that you're going to need development to be able to change the app to take advantage of a lower cost option in the cloud, because the SaaS stuff, the stuff that's easy, the things that are a fit for when you lift in are going to get more expensive over time, and they're going to be more expensive than potentially refactoring to a different solution a lot of times. So you need that buy-in. So if you are considering moving a workload to the public cloud, we can go deeper and deeper into that with another session. If you're considering moving a workload out of the public cloud or going into more of a hybrid posture, we're going to go over that too. And then, yeah, we'll see how this goes. Hopefully this has been useful to folks, and let me see if I can figure out what just happened with my recording here. Thanks, everybody. See you later.